Pierce Callahan had no intention of falling in love when he boarded the cruise ship alone. He just wanted to disappear for a while. After selling his company for several $100 million 3 months ago, the media had been relentless. Every tabloid headline screamed his name. Every business outlet speculated his next move. But Pierce didn't care, not anymore. He just wanted quiet. No board meetings, no investors, no deadlines, just the sea, so when the concierge mentioned that due to overbooking, he'd be sharing a dinner table with another solo traveler, he didn't argue. He just wanted to eat and go back to his suite. What he didn't expect, what completely derailed his plans, was the woman already sitting at the table, swirling her wine with one hand and flipping through a novel with the other. She looked up. Their eyes locked. "Oh," she said, blinking. "You must be the mystery table mate." "Guilty," he replied, pulling out the chair across from her. "Pierce," she set her book down. Jolie Vance." Her voice was warm, casual, no recognition in her eyes, no fake smile, no subtle glances at his wristwatch or shoes. She didn't know who he was, and she didn't seem to care. That was new. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything," he said, nodding to her book. "Just killing time until the food comes. I've read it twice." "You always bring books to dinner?" "Only when I'm eating with a stranger," he laughed. Harsh, she smiled. "You're not so bad yet." Dinner came, then dessert, then another glass of wine. Somehow they were still talking long after the waiters cleared the table. She told him she was a high school art teacher from Portland. He told her he was between things. She didn't press. "I didn't peg you for a cruise guy," she said eventually, resting her chin on her hand. "I'm not. First one." "Me too," she said. "Needed to get away. Life's been messy lately." He didn't ask. She didn't offer. But something about the way she said it, the way her smile faltered for just a second, hit him harder than it should have. "You want to get some air?" he asked. Outside, the night was quiet. The ocean stretched endlessly beneath the ship's railing. Jolie leaned into the wind, her hair blowing across her face. "So," she said, glancing sideways at him. "You on the run from something?" He raised an eyebrow. "Why do you think that? You've got that haunted look." Like someone who finally stopped running but hasn't figured out what to do with the silence. Pierce didn't respond right away. She looked up at him. "Too honest?" "No," he said softly. "Just accurate." They stood there, shoulder to shoulder, the ship slicing through the black water. He hadn't expected her, he hadn't wanted anyone, but something about her loosened the knot in his chest. "You want to do this again tomorrow?" he asked. "Dinner, I mean." She looked surprised. "You sure? I thought you were just being polite tonight." "I don't do polite," she laughed. "All right then, Mr. Not Polite. Same time." "Same time." He walked her back to her cabin, stopping just outside the door. "Thanks for tonight," she said. "It's been a while since I laughed like that." "Me too." She hesitated. "Good night, Pierce." "Night, Jolie." He turned, but her voice stopped him. "Hey, if you're between things, what were you before?" He met her eyes. "CEO." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Of what?" He smiled. "Something I don't miss," she grinned. "Now I'm curious." "Good. Maybe tomorrow I'll tell you." Back in his suite, Pierce poured himself a drink and sat on the balcony. The stars were out, the ocean calm, but his thoughts were all over the place. Jolie Vance. There was something about her that felt like gravity. He'd only known her a few hours, but she'd already managed to cut through the noise in his head. He hadn't laughed in months. Hadn't felt this. Seen, he downed the rest of his drink. He was in trouble. The next night, she wore a yellow sundress and no makeup. She looked even better than he remembered. They talked for hours again. She told him about her students, her dream of opening a pottery studio. He told her a little more about his past, still vague, but enough to make her curious. By the third night, he was waiting at the table before she even arrived. By the fourth, they didn't even bother with the dining hall. He had the cruise staff set up a private dinner on the top deck, candles, string lights, a violinist. She walked up, eyes wide. "What is this?" "You said you liked stargazing," he said. "I thought we'd make a night of it." "You did all this?" He pulled out her chair. "You're worth it." She sat slowly, still stunned. "You're full of surprises, only the good kind." Dinner was quiet, more intimate. Their hands brushed more than once. Her laughter was softer. When she leaned in to tell him a story about one of her students, her knee touched his under the table and stayed there. He didn't move away. And when the violinist started playing something slow and sweet, Pierce stood and held out his hand. dance with me." "Here? Why not?" She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. They danced slowly under the stars, the ship rocking gently beneath them. Her head rested on his chest. His hand rested on the small of her back. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. When the song ended, she stepped back slightly, her eyes searching his. "Pierce, what is this?" He looked at her, heart thudding in his chest. "I don't know." "But I don't want it to end when we dock," she blinked. "We've only known each other a few days." "I know, this is crazy, I know, but I don't want it to end either." And then she kissed him. There was nothing hesitant about it, no slow build. Just heat and truth and everything they hadn't said out loud. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered, "I think I'm in trouble." He smiled against her lips. "Me too." Pierce hadn't planned on waking up with her name in his mouth. But when morning sunlight filtered through the balcony curtains of his suite, the first thing he thought of was Jolie's kiss, and the second was the way she'd looked at him afterward. Like she wasn't sure if she'd just made a mistake or started something she couldn't walk away from. He hadn't wanted to start anything serious. But serious was exactly where his head was headed. The ship docked in Santorini that afternoon, and while most passengers rushed to book excursions and guided tours, Pierce made a call and arranged something very different. When Jolie stepped out of the elevator to meet him, she paused at the sight of the black Vespa parked beside him on the pier, 2 helmets in hand. "You're kidding," she said, raising an eyebrow. "You said you hated crowds," he replied, tossing her one of the helmets. "I figured we'd do this our own way. You drive, I do everything." She gave him a long look, but she slid the helmet on. "All right, Callahan, let's see if you can keep us alive." They took the winding coastal roads slowly, the wind rushing past them, the sun high and golden. He didn't talk much while they rode, and neither did she. But her arms tightened around his waist when they passed the cliffs, and he didn't want her to let go. He brought her to a quiet beach, tucked behind a row of olive trees and completely empty. The sand was warm, the waves gentle, and a picnic had been laid out beneath a linen canopy when they arrived. Wine, fresh fruit, local cheese, still warm bread. Jolie crouched down beside the basket, her expression unreadable. "You do this for all your cruise flings?" He crouched beside her. "No." "I've never done this for anyone." She turned her head slowly. "Why me?" "Because you're not impressed by any of it," he said, "and that makes me want to impress you anyway." She looked away, and he saw something shift behind her eyes, not fear exactly, something older than that. "Did something happen?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer right away, then she reached for a piece of bread and tore it in half. "I was engaged," she said. 2 years ago, he called it off the day before our wedding, said he wasn't ready and I was too much." Pierce swallowed hard. "Too much, too passionate, too intense, too committed," he said. "I overwhelmed him." "Then he didn't deserve you." She glanced at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "You don't know me well enough to say that, maybe not. But I know what it's like to be told you're too much when all you ever did was give your whole heart." She blinked. "Who told you that?" "My father, my board, my last partner, take your pick." He hadn't meant to say it, but once it was out, it stayed there between them, heavy and real. She lay back on the blanket, staring up at the sky. "What happened with her?" He lay beside her. "She liked the power, not the person. When I sold the company, she left." Jolie was silent for a long moment, then she turned her head toward him. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who hides behind charm and money, but you're honest." He reached for her hand. "I don't want to pretend with you." "I don't want you to." They stayed until the sun began to lower, painting the sky in orange and violet. On the ride back, she rested her head against his back, and he drove slower than before, hoping the road would stretch out just a little longer. That night, she didn't meet him at dinner. He waited at the table for over an hour. No call, no message, no sign of her. By the time he returned to his suite, frustration had settled into his chest. Had he misread everything? Had he pushed too fast? He stepped onto the balcony, trying to breathe through the questions, when a soft knock came at his door. He opened it to find Jolie standing there barefoot, hair damp, eyes tired. "I'm sorry," she said before he could speak. "I wasn't ready to feel that much in one day." He stepped aside. She walked in. "I didn't mean to disappear," she said, running her fingers through her hair. I just..." Needed to reset. You scare me. Me, her voice cracked. You feel real. I don't know what to do with that. He walked toward her slowly. Then let's go slow. Let's figure it out together. She looked up at him, eyes shining. I don't want to run. I just don't know how to stay. You don't have to know, he whispered, brushing his thumb against her cheek. You just have to try. She leaned into his touch, eyes fluttering shut. He kissed her gently, a promise more than a plea. When she pulled back, she took a deep breath. Can I stay here tonight? Just sleep, he nodded. Of course. She curled against him under the sheets an hour later, her breathing steady against his chest. He stayed awake, watching the moonlight paint silver lines across her skin, wondering when exactly this woman had gotten inside his ribs and made herself a home. He didn't know where the ship was heading next, but he knew exactly where his heart was. Pierce hadn't planned on waking up with Jolie still in his arms. But the sun was already creeping across the floor, and she was curled against him, one leg tangled with his, her breathing slow and even. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship, and he lay still, watching the way her lashes fluttered before her eyes blinked open. She didn't move right away, neither did he. Is it always this loud in your head when you wake up? She asked, her voice husky. He glanced down at her. Only since I met you. She pushed herself upright, tucking the sheet around her chest. That sounds like something a man says when he's about to disappear. I'm not disappearing, her eyes searched his. Then what are you doing? Pierce sat up, resting his elbows on his knees. Trying to figure out how I walked on this ship to get away from everything and ended up wanting to build something again. Jolie tilted her head. With me, if you'll let me. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, pulled her dress from the chair, and slipped it on without ceremony. Her movements were slower than usual, not hesitant exactly, but thoughtful. I have to meet someone in town this morning, she said carefully. A friend of my mom's. She lives on the island and insisted I stop by. He nodded once. Do you want me to come with you? No, she said, reaching for her sandals. I think I need to go alone. Pierce stood too, watching her. Are you pulling away? I'm protecting something, she said, meeting his gaze. I just haven't decided if it's you or me. He didn't try to stop her. He didn't push. He simply opened the door and let her walk out. The hours that followed were harder than he expected. He walked the town's narrow, whitewashed streets, keeping his head low, avoiding crowds. Tourists bustled around him, snapping photos, licking gelato, bartering for souvenirs. He couldn't focus on any of it. He ducked into a small cafe tucked behind a crumbling stone wall and took a seat in the back, ordering a black coffee he didn't touch. His phone buzzed once, a message from his assistant reminding him about an award he'd been nominated for, a tech innovation prize that used to mean something. He deleted the message without replying. The last time he'd cared about accolades, he still believed they'd make him feel enough. Now all he could think about was the look in Jolie's eyes when she said she didn't know who she was protecting. By mid-afternoon, he wandered back to the ship, but her room was empty. He stood outside her door, unsure what he even wanted to say, before turning and walking away. He hadn't felt this powerless in a long time. That night, she didn't appear at the dining hall. The table they'd shared for nights now was empty, the wine untouched. He didn't sit down. He couldn't. Instead, he walked to the upper deck, the breeze sharp against his skin, and leaned against the railing, staring at the horizon. The stars were starting to emerge one by one like slow confessions. He heard her footsteps before he saw her. I was hoping you'd be here, she said behind him. He turned slowly. You didn't come to dinner. I didn't know if I should. He didn't speak, just waited. I went to meet that friend, she said, stepping closer, and she told me something that made everything worse. Pierce stayed silent. She said I don't know how to let people love me unless they leave first. That hit him harder than he expected. I don't want to run, she continued, voice quiet, but everything in me is wired to believe this isn't real, that people like you don't stay. I'm not people like me, he said. She looked down. You're a man who's used to control, who's used to deciding everything, but you can't fix me, Pierce. I'm not a project. I don't want to fix you. Then what do you want? I want to find out what happens when neither of us walks away. Jolie's breath hitched. That sounds like a risk. It is. What if I can't give you what you want? He stepped forward, closing the space between them. Then we figure it out together. I'm not asking for perfection, I'm asking for honesty. I don't know how to do this halfway. Good, he said. Because neither do I. She looked up at him, her eyes brighter than they'd been that morning. I'm scared. So am I. She pressed her hand against his chest, just over his heart. Then don't make me do this alone. Never. He bent down and kissed her, not rushed, not hungry, but deep and slow, the kind of kiss that asked for trust and promised it back. When they pulled apart, she whispered, I didn't expect this. I didn't either. She leaned her forehead against his. What happens when the cruise ends? He wrapped his arms around her. Then we write the next chapter on land. She laughed softly, the sound against his neck like a thread pulling him back from every edge he didn't know he'd been standing on. I want to go all in, she said, but you should know. I've never done this without sabotaging it. Then let's sabotage the sabotage, he said, pulling her closer. We'll mess up, we'll get scared, but we won't quit. She squeezed her eyes shut, then opened them again. Don't promise me things you can't keep. I'm only promising one thing, he said. I'm not going anywhere. The ship swayed gently beneath them, the sky above endless and quiet. She didn't speak again that night. She just stayed. The cruise was down to its final day, and the Mediterranean sun clung to everything like a memory refusing to fade. Jolie stood barefoot on the teak deck outside her cabin, resting her arms on the rail, watching the water churn. Her hair was still damp from their swim earlier that morning, a hidden cove Pierce had found after bribing the excursion director to let them charter their own boat. They'd laughed, dived, kissed under the water, and shared a silence afterward that felt more binding than words. But now, facing the reality of disembarkation, the air between them had shifted. Not in the way that meant something was wrong, but in the way that meant everything was about to change. She turned when she heard footsteps behind her. Pierce leaned against the railing beside her, holding a small velvet pouch in his hand. He didn't offer it immediately. I made a decision, he said. She glanced at him, one brow lifting. Should I be worried? Probably, he replied, but his tone was warm. I'm not going back to New York, she blinked. What? I'm not ready to go back to that life, the suits, the headlines, the constant chase of something I never actually wanted, she frowned. But your company's gone. You already stepped away. I stepped away from the business, he said, but not the identity. People still expect me to be that man. I still answer calls I don't believe in. I still pretend I want back in. And now, he said, finally opening the pouch and placing a set of keys in her palm, I'm staying in Santorini, at least for a while, bought a place up the hill. She stared at the keys, then up at him. You bought a house, not a house, a villa. It's got an art studio, huge windows, ocean view. It's a little wrecked, needs work, but I figured it'd be a start. For what? For something real, he said. And before you panic, no, I'm not asking you to move in. I'm saying I'm staying put. And if you ever want to visit or paint or think or just be, it's yours too. She looked down at the keys. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet, he said. Just come with me tonight. To where, you'll see. That evening, just before sunset, she stepped out of her cabin to find him waiting in a charcoal gray suit, no tie, sleeves pushed to his forearms. He didn't say a word, just offered his hand. She took it. They boarded a private tender boat that carried them from the cruise ship to a secluded pier where a black car was waiting. 30 minutes later, they were walking through a vineyard at the edge of a cliff, the sea stretched out below like a sheet of glass. Lanterns lined the path. A long table stood beneath a canopy of grapevines set for two. Jolie turned in a slow circle, taking it in. You planned this. I had help, he said, but the idea was mine. The host poured them wine from a local barrel and slipped away. The sun was slipping low now, casting a golden haze over the world. They sat, and for a while they just ate and listened to the wind. Then Pierce reached into his jacket. I didn't plan to do this, he said. Not this soon, not like this, but I've learned something. Jolie set down her fork. I've built companies, I've broken records, I've made more money than I ever needed, but I never built something that made me feel like this. He looked at her. You make me want permanence, you make me want to stop running, her breath caught. He slid a small box across the table. I'm not asking for an answer tonight, I just want you to have this, so you know I meant every second. She didn't open it at first, just stared at the box, then at him. "You're serious," she breathed. "I've never been more." She finally opened it. Inside was a simple ring rose gold, brushed finish with a tiny sapphire set inside the band. Not flashy, not loud, but beautiful. "I had it made," he said. "It's not about the ring, it's about the space it holds for us, for what this could be." She closed the lid slowly, then stood. He followed her lead, his heart pounding. "I didn't come here looking for someone," she said. "I came here to get away from the version of me that begged for love." "Then don't beg," he said. "Just choose." She looked out at the sea, then back at him. "And if I say yes someday, then I'll spend the rest of my life earning it." Tears welled in her eyes, not from fear, but from the ache of being seen finally as someone worth standing still for. She stepped closer. "I don't need a perfect man. I need someone who doesn't flinch when I do." "I'm not going anywhere," he said, "even when you flinch." She exhaled a shaky laugh. "Then my answer is yes." Pierce froze. I mean yes," she whispered. "I don't want to figure this out from separate places. I want to try now. With you." He pulled her into his arms, and she pressed her face to his chest as the sun dipped beneath the horizon. The moment wasn't showy or loud, just steady, like everything they'd built without even realizing. Later that night, back on the ship, they stood at the bow, wind rushing past them. She slipped the ring on, her fingers trembling. He kissed her hand, then wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You know," she murmured, "when I saw your name on the table card that first night, I thought you'd be boring." He laughed against her ear. "I thought you'd be temporary." She leaned back into him. "We were both wrong." He tightened his arms around her. Thank God for that. They stayed like that until the lights of the harbor came into view, the future drawing closer with every wave, steady and full of promise. The villa was still half-furnished, echoing with possibility. Jolie stood barefoot in the open-concept kitchen, sunlight streaming through the arched windows behind her. The air smelled of sea salt and fresh lemons from the bowl she'd set on the counter. She was painting the wall in front of her, slow, thoughtful strokes of a deep slate blue when Pierce walked in, sleeves rolled, a paintbrush in one hand and 2 iced coffees in the other. "You're already cheating on our color schedule," he said, eyeing the bold hue she was laying down. She glanced over her shoulder. "It's not cheating, it's creative instinct." He handed her a drink and leaned against the counter. "That's what you said yesterday when you moved the couch to face the back window." "I was right, wasn't I?" He smiled as she took a sip. "You're always right." She raised a brow. "Say that again. I want to remember this moment." He stepped behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. "You're always right, especially when you're wrong." "Careful," she said. "I'm holding a paintbrush." "Noted." They stood there in silence for a moment, Jolie's brush hovering in the air. "I spoke to my principal this morning," she said finally. He didn't move. "How'd it go?" They were surprised, said I could take a year, maybe 2. They even offered to help with a remote curriculum if I wanted to start a virtual art program. He turned her gently to face him. "Do you want to do that?" "I think I do, at least for now. I want to create without pressure. I want to see what happens when I build something for me." He kissed her forehead. "Then let's build it." A knock echoed through the hallway. Jolie frowned. "You expecting someone?" Pierce shook his head. Jolie wiped her hands on a rag and followed him to the front door. A tall, silver-haired man in a tailored suit stood on the porch, holding a leather portfolio. He gave a tight nod. "Mr. Callahan, I'm sorry to arrive unannounced." Jolie stepped back slightly as Pierce stiffened. "Charles, I thought you were in Zurich." "I was, then I heard about your change in plans." Charles's eyes flicked to Jolie, then back to Pierce. "May I speak with you privately?" Pierce didn't budge. "You can speak in front of her." Charles hesitated. "We've had multiple offers to buy the rest of the Callahan patents. One in particular comes from a former competitor. They're offering double what we projected." "I'm not interested. This could set you up for life." "I already have a life," Pierce said calmly, "and it's not on paper anymore." Charles's expression tightened. "This isn't about money, this is about legacy." Jolie's hand slid into Pierce's. He didn't look at her, but he held on. "My legacy isn't something that needs to be sold," he said, "and if you can't respect that, then we're done here." Charles gave a curt nod, turned, and walked back to his car without another word. Jolie closed the door slowly. That was intense. I used to think I owed the world something, he said. Now I just want to create something that lasts with you. She touched his cheek. You already are. They painted the rest of the day in comfortable quiet. By dusk, the place looked different, warmer, lived in hers. Later, they sat on the rooftop terrace, wrapped in a blanket, watching the lights of the island flicker on one by one. Jolie leaned into him, tracing the edge of his jaw with her fingertip. There's something I never told you, she said. Pierce glanced down. Should I be worried? I used to keep a list of things I wanted in a partner, he laughed softly. And how badly did I fail? She turned to face him. You didn't check most of the boxes. Ouch. But then I realized something. I was making a list of things I thought I needed. Not things that matter. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. And now I just want someone who sees me, who stays when it gets hard, who builds a life with me, not around me. His voice was low. I'm all in, I know. They kissed slowly, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything, just gave. A few months later, the villa was unrecognizable. The floors gleamed. Jolie's art studio was filled with canvases, brushes, and light. A small gallery in town had already asked to feature her work. She said yes. One morning, Pierce came in from the garden with his hands behind his back. You're up early, Jolie said, still in her robe. I had something delivered. She raised a brow. Is it edible? Better, he said, revealing 2 passports and a folded itinerary. 1 month, Venice, Prague, Morocco, then Paris. She blinked. You planned a trip. You said you always wanted to see the world. I figured it's time. Her fingers ran over the page, her voice quiet. You remembered. I never forget anything you tell me, especially the things you say in passing. Her eyes shimmered. What if we never come back? Then we'll just keep finding new places to call home. She ran into his arms, laughing through her tears. You're impossible. You're welcome. They left the next week. Over the years, the villa became their home base, a place of laughter and music and Sunday dinners. Jolie's art went on to be featured in European exhibits, and Pierce invested in local businesses, always from the shadows, never needing to be the face of anything again. On their 5th anniversary, they hosted a dinner under the same grapevines where she'd once said yes. Friends gathered from all over, artists, travelers, former students, new friends who felt old. The night was filled with clinking glasses, dancing barefoot in the dirt, and whispered promises between kisses. Pierce pulled her aside as the music slowed. You still make everything quiet, he said. And you still make everything feel possible, she whispered back. They danced under the stars the same way they had on the ship years before. This time they weren't passing through, they were home. Together. Always.